Hello everyone, welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video. I know, I'm sorry, it has been a little bit of a while. I've been very busy these past few weeks, so I haven't had the opportunity to make the number of Kerbal Space Program videos that I kind of wanted to make. But, you know, that's not without good reason. Things have just been, like I said, super duper busy. I had a couple of weekends away. I had this issue with my car, so I had to get rid of my car and get a new car. I'll probably end up talking about that story at some point in this video, because I feel like this video is going to be a bit of a long one, ironically. So, just to give you guys kind of a picture of where my life is right now this week. For me, it is Wednesday, my dudes, the 10th of May to be precise. And I'm going away this weekend, all weekend. Just me. My girlfriend is guarding the house, so none of you ne'er-do-wells try and burgle me. But I'm going to Bike Park Wales for the second time ever. I love Bike Park Wales. It's great. Keep an eye out on the second channel for Bike Park Wales video coming soon, TM. But I thought, right, it's been too long since I made a Kerbal Space Program video on my channel, which is largely dedicated to Kerbal Space Program content. I feel like I owe you guys. A lot of you guys like donate to my Patreon and my YouTube channel member page, and I'm very grateful, and I feel like I'm kind of letting you down a bit by not keeping up the Kerbal Space Program content cadence. So I thought, let's just do a nice, simple KSP mission, because like I say, I'm going away this weekend. So I've got any time at the weekend to do space this week or work on Kerbal content. So kind of Wednesday for me today was when I make Kerbal content. Tomorrow, Thursday, is when I make my Space This Week video for Sunday, and then just make some quick changes when I'm back on Sunday night. So again, Space This Week might not be a Patreon version, I'm sorry. But yeah, that's the sitch. That's the situation. And this mission was supposed to be a simple one, alright? I've only done one Duna mission in Kerbal Space Program 2 so far, and that was building a base on Duna, which I feel like doesn't really count, right? I guess it does, but it's not that challenging because we're not coming back from Duna, and that kind of takes away some of the challenge of visiting the red planet. So I thought, let's just make good on. Let's just change that today and do a nice, simple Apollo-style mission to Duna. And my goodness, guys, literally everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. From user error, admittedly, some of it, a very tiny, minuscule proportion of user error, glitches, Kraken attacks, self-destructions, craft just falling apart are the works. Kerbal Space Program 2 is still a bit of a broken mess, I'm afraid. But it's a beautiful mess, and that's why I stick with it for you guys. Here is the rocket, by the way. Didn't really talk about the construction of any of it, because you can see how it works when we fly it. And what better time to transition to the launch pad and launch it than now, I guess. And ain't it a beautiful sight, taking off into the air. You may have noticed I did a test flight of this thing while I was building it, and realized that it was very, very, very wobbly. Yes, things that KSP2 still needs to fix. Episode 957, wobbly rockets, still just as wobbly as ever. So I had to strut this thing to high heaven, and it's somewhat stable now. Still a little bit wobbly. Another reason why it's a bit more wobbly than I would have liked, and I cut this out of the build time lapse, is because I changed out the docking port between the Duna lander and the mothership command pod. I initially had the large docking port, so the docking port Senior. Is it still called Senior in KSP2? I never even thought to check. I'm assuming it is. I did a test flight, and when I decoupled the docking ports, the ship just got destroyed. Do you remember that glitch? I feel like it happened a lot more before the first two patches. But yeah, when I tried to undock it, the vessel would just get destroyed. So I'm like, right, fine. I've had lots of experience now with the smaller docking ports, and they seem fairly reliable now. So I'm going to switch those out for the smaller docking ports. But obviously, the smaller docking ports have a more wobbly connection. So yeah, the top of the rocket is a bit more wobbly. Speaking of the top of the rocket, you might be curious about that big red module right at the tip. That's only there for crew safety. I wanted this ship to have a launch escape system, so that if in the likely event of the rocket exploding, the crew can be pulled to safety. But once we're in space, as you can see, we don't need this module anymore because we have a proper command module down there. I just didn't want to have to faff around with reconfiguring the ship and all that. I just wanted to have a nice, simple, easy setup because, again, I had a limited time frame to make this video. I wanted things to be nice and simple, nice and quick, and yet here we are. Now, when I said user error, this was it. I don't know how, because I've been playing Kerbal Space Program for like 8 years, and somehow I forgot that that lander module only has 2 seats. So I was like, by the way, there's the launch escape system disappearing. So I was like, I thought it had 3 seats, because I guess it's the same diameter as the Apollo style command pod, and maybe that's where my confusion came from. But yeah, that was a bit of a big sad. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough seats now in my, Kerbin return module. I should just clarify the anatomy of my rocket, whilst it's obviously not on screen, so this is the optimal time to clarify this. The big blue module at the front, that's the Duna lander. The little middle lander can piece is the Kerbin return, and obviously the golden hydrogen tank is the interplanetary transfer stage. By the way, speaking of getting interplanetary, I forgot to launch at a Duna transfer window, so I had to quickly go to the tracking station, time warp to a point where Kerbin was 45 degrees behind Duna. I'm not going to say the sentence. Alright, I will. If you draw a line from Kerbin to the sun to Juno, that angle, the angle that line forms at the sun should be 45 degrees. That's how you know you're launching at the optimal time. Or you can just do what I did and not launch at that time and just, leave your Kerbal stuck in space for 185 days. But yes, things, all of this, I look back and think how quaint. And I thought, this is a disaster. This is really bad. I had no idea. I look at Matt from 2 hours ago and think, what a naive, young fool. No idea what's in store. But all of that is to come. But yeah, a lot of things, a lot of disasters are ahead of us. But admittedly, not for a little while. For this part of the mission, things were fairly plain old sailing. I'm just setting up my, mid-course correction burn to make sure I'm on an equatorial insertion around Duna. And I'm just going to bask in the blissful ignorance of me not knowing what's to come. Does that sentence make sense? Don't know. Gotta press ahead. If it didn't really work, well, isn't that just emblematic of this video? The mission. Whatever. Guys, let me tell you a little thing about plushies. You really liked mine. It has sold so well that Makeship have decided to extend its campaign by another week. So you have an extra 7 days to buy one, or 2, or 17. However many you choose to buy, you have to act fast, as there will be no more extensions after this. This time next week, you will never, ever get to buy the plushie ever again, ever. So act now if you want one. There is a button on screen and of course a link in the description to take you to the page. And when the plushies start shipping and litho breaking into your homes, I'll be running a competition on my Discord server where you can post a photo of your rocket and astronaut landed somewhere, and whoever sends their astronauts to the coolest destination will win a free copy of Kerbal Space Program 2. So what are you waiting for? Click that link below. So yeah, guys, I mentioned, now I'm just going to go into waffle territory, because why not? We're at that part. It was 7 minutes in. Everyone's clicked off by now. Now it's just me and you, Jack. Anyone called Jack watching might have been freaked out just then. Who knows? But yeah, I've had some issues with my car. I haven't, actually. My car has been great. It's a Honda Jazz, though. And for Americans, I think it's called the Fit in your country. I don't know if it's called the Fit anywhere else. I'm pretty sure it's the Jazz everywhere except North America, but I could be wrong. Do not at me. But yeah, in America, I'm pretty sure it's like considered a youthful / hipster sort of vehicle. In the UK, very different story. It's the old person car. And I feel like maybe there's some confirmation bias at play here, but I feel like whenever I'm driving it, people are a lot more aggressive around me trying to get past me because they think I'm some like clueless old person who's just going to dodder along at 10 miles an hour. Even though like I drive within the speed limit, to be fair. I'm not a dangerous driver, but I'm like not a slow driver either. Like I want to get to where I'm going efficiently. So yeah, I didn't really like the fact that everyone thinks I'm an elderly person. And also, it's not a very cool car, is it? I mean, it's a 2011 Honda Jazz. Just Google it and be like, it's not the prettiest thing in the world. Basically, I had a Vauxhall Corsa before this car, and it had so many things going wrong with it. Like every month, something would go wrong with it, and it just got to the point where like I'd finally fixed something, and then I went to go drive it, and I turned the fan knob, the thing that tells you where the air is going to blow out of the fans. I turned that, and it snapped, and I was like, I'm done. I'm just done with this car. I just was broken at that, but I was like, right, that's it. I'm getting rid of this car. And this feeling is kind of how I felt when flying this rocket right about now. As you can see, I'm trying to undock the lander from the mothership. And as you can see, it's just not happening. I press undock and literally nothing happens. Paige wags her little finger all passively aggressively, and then nothing happens. Things don't separate. I'm like, well, shoot. I need to be able to separate these modules. Then I accidentally staged the decoupler for the lander. So I'm like, well, I'm going to see if this works. Because I might have enough delta V in this lander to just land like this and then just return to Kerbin and forget about the hydrogen stage. But as you can see, this happened. I don't think I need to really say anything for you to get the gist of what's happening here. It's that weird glitch where the game has separated the two modules, but it also hasn't. So we're in this weird sort of limbo where the camera is trying to follow the central point of these two now separated vessels that aren't actually separated. I have no idea. I'm no programmer. I'm sure there's like a way I could explain this in programmer terms if I knew anything about programming. Regrettably, the extent of my programming knowledge is being subscribed to the Programmer Humor subreddit, and also I know how to make batch files since I was like a teenager, and that's pretty much where my adventures into the world of programming sort of started and ended. Batch file programming is quite useful. Like when at work, let me tell you, I am seen as some sort of wizard of the computer, because at work the computers are really, really ancient. They've got they're very old, basically. They've got Windows Vista stickers on them as a frame of reference. And when I get to work, I have to open 7 different programs, and they all take ages to open, and some of them require you going into Chrome and opening a website and downloading a thing and clicking the download and running that. It takes ages, and I'd rather just not waste my life doing that. So I wrote a batch program, like a batch file that just opens all of that, clicks everything for me, and downloads everything and opens it, so I can just press one button in the morning and then just go off and just make a coffee and then come back 5 minutes later and everything is ready to use. And I am seen as a god among men for this ability. So yeah, I like to think my programming skills are quite good, and then I talk to actual programmers and I'm like, oh yeah, I actually don't know anything about programming. So there you are. Speaking of no, that's not really a segue, is it? You might have seen me. I left all the bloopers in of me attempting to land this thing in various different ways. And in the end, I decided to deorbit using the hydrogen fuel tank stage and then just try and land with the lander and also the Kerbin re-entry module still docked to it, because clearly we can't undock the two. And also the re-entry module has parachutes, which the lander does not, because I engineered too much delta V in this thing. So I'm like, oh, we can land on engine like the Martian, and it'd be really cool. And in the end, this turned out to be invaluable, having an over-engineered lander, because this now has enough delta V, in theory, to get back to Kerbin. So that's the new plan. We're going to forget about the interplanetary transfer stage. We're just going to land on Duna with the lander. That was planned. But then we're going to get back into Duna orbit and then just go back home using the lander as well. And this isn't even the last of the big oofs in this mission. Is that still even a thing? I feel like oof is now a dated meme. It's like 7 months old. That's like 17 years in internet years. I don't know. Yeah, I kind of had a defeatist attitude, thinking like, oh, maybe I'm going to just have to strand my Kerbals here and do a Blunderbirds episode at some point in the future. So I preemptively named the flag site Stranded in case I gave up. There's me capturing a screenshot in Windows just to sort of see if maybe I'll have to just end the video there. But then I thought, you know what? We're at least going to try. And judging by the fact that we're nowhere near the end of this video, you can probably piece 2 and 2 together that I do in fact attempt the Kerbin return, and I do in fact make it. Spoiler alert. Because really it's about the journey, not the destination. And I hope you guys enjoy the terrible thing that is the journey back to Kerbin. Anyway, where was I? My Vauxhall Corsa. Terrible car. Kept going wrong. Don't buy a 2010 Vauxhall Corsa. So then I was looking at buying a new car, and I was like, they're all ridiculous. A Ford Fiesta is now £25,000 because it is the year 2021, where we still have like a semiconductor shortage and cars are just really expensive because no one's buying new cars because we can't make new cars, so the used car market has gone crazy. So I thought, right, I don't know what to do. I don't want to carry on with this Corsa because it's terrible. What do I do? So I got this Jazz from my girlfriend Beth's parents. We're getting rid of it. And they were like, you can just have this if you want to look after it because we don't need it anymore. So I've got this Jazz and I lasted about a year with it. It's a good car. It's a reliable little car. The reason why it's called a Honda Fit, I guess, in the United States and or possibly other places, I don't know, is because it's literally like a little TARDIS. It's so big on the inside. Like, it can carry loads of stuff. It's ideal for me, but it's very slow. It's not very powerful for how heavy it is. And this particular Honda Jazz did not have air conditioning. And I remember, my lasting memory of this car will be when I had to drive back to visit my parents, which is about a 270-mile trip in the scorching heat of the summer during summer traffic. So, like, literally it took about 8 hours. And it was torture. I was like in a sweat box. Like, it was me and my girlfriend traveling, and we literally had to pull into service stations every so often just to basically go into the showers and just douse ourselves with cold water, empty out our water bottles, which had become boiling hot in this inferno of a car, and then fill them up with cold water, buy like cold drinks from W.H. Smith, which if you're British, you know the expense of that. We just bought like cold Coke and cold like Sprite, and then after 3 miles it was all boiling hot again. It was awful. It was terrible. We finally arrived at my parents' house. We were like, we would give you a hug, but we stink and we're disgusting. We're gonna go have a cold shower now, and we'll see you in 15 minutes. So yeah, that was my lasting moment, because it didn't have a sunroof. I've owned cars without air conditioning in the past. They were like old cars from like the 80s and 90s, and they had sunroofs, so heat rises out the car. Not too bad. This car didn't. So yeah, it was a decent little car, but it didn't have air conditioning, and yeah, it was just a not a very cool car. And I thought, you know what? I would like to have a nice car. I've never had a nice car. I've only ever had cheap, crappy cars. And I thought, you know what? I'm close to 30, and I've never had a nice car before. I guess I'm having a 1/3 life crisis. I was like, I just want a nice car that's nice. But I also wanted a car that could fit my mountain bike in it and could fit kayaks on the roof. So I kind of needed a big-ish car, but also a car that's small enough to fit in my garage, which is quite small. And also, it's on a very narrow service road, which is only like, according to Google Maps measurements, it's 3.2 meters wide. Very, very narrow. So I can't have like a big estate, because that's too long to do the turn into the garage. The turning circle's too big. So in the end, I settled on the Mini Clubman. And it's so cool. I really like it. And it's the first time I've ever like owned a car, and I look at it and think, that's a nice little car. I'm really happy with it. And it's quite, I splashed out. I got the sport version, and it's really nice, guys, when you have a car and you put your foot down and it speeds up. With the Jazz, you put your foot down. I mean, the Jazz, 0 to 60 is more of a yes or no question when it comes to the performance of that car. This car, you put your foot down, it's like, oh, it actually goes rather quickly. So yeah, I'm super happy with it. I'm really looking forward to owning it and having adventures in it. And yeah, like I say, first adventure is this weekend, going to Bike Park Wales. The car is all loaded up, ready with my bike and all that. And yeah, very excited. Hopefully the journey goes better than the journey from Duna to Kerbin. As you can see, I had that weird glitch that I thought, or I guess more assumed would be a more accurate word there, had been patched out, where my the trajectory around the sun changed when I left Duna's sphere of influence. So as you can see, my trajectory around the sun was going to be dipping in and intersecting Kerbin's orbit, but then when I left Duna's sphere of influence, the opposite happened. I was literally pinged further away, and yeah, this was really, really frustrating. I feel like this happened on either my Moho mission or my Elu mission, or even my Val mission. I don't know, they all kind of bleed together really in terms of which mission had which glitch. But yeah, in the end I decided, right, what about, clearly when I leave Duna's sphere of influence, my orbit is going way higher than what I want it to do. So maybe if I swing my maneuver node around, so now I'm going the opposite way. Do you see what I mean? Hopefully, I think the maneuver node, for whatever reason, is not taking into account the position of Duna relative to Kerbin and relative to the sun. It's just, does that make sense? It makes sense to me, but I feel like it's hard for me to articulate into words, which is obviously a shame, because my job as a commentator is to articulate my actions into words. Nearly messed up that sentence explaining that very thing. So there you go. That's what we got to work with here, guys. It's 18 minutes into a video. So we're already at the flagging territory if history is anything to go by. So yeah, anyway, back to the car story, which I know you guys are all enjoying. It wasn't really a simple day. So basically, King Charles was crowned at the weekend, and so to celebrate, as a nation, we were all given Monday off. Monday was a national holiday. So I thought this is as good an opportunity as any. Now is the time to get a new car. So the night before, We stripped out the Honda Jazz. We took everything out of the car. Oh, by the way, as you can see, my trick, it worked. But then I couldn't make a maneuver node that could get an encounter with Kerbin. Bear in mind, I've only got 599 meters per second of delta V, which in theory is enough, but I couldn't get an encounter with Kerbin. Even though, had the maneuver node just worked and predicted things correctly so that when I left the sphere of influence of Duna, things would have just remained persistent. This was all, like, very frustrating. So it's like, I was so close to just turning on infinite fuel, but I was like, you know what, let's just time warp. To heck with how the Kerbals feel. I'm just going to time warp around until I just get an encounter that's easy and I'm going to think about things. So I eventually got a close encounter node and can just do a correction burn at minimal delta V expense to get the Kerbin encounter that I wanted. Anyway, I'm going to just let the video play out and just ignore what's happening on screen now so I can tell you guys about the rest of this story because it's not the end of the story, let me tell you. So after finishing editing Space this week on Sunday night, it was very dark. This is a key point, I promise. We went into the Jazz and I was like, right, we need to clear it out, unplug the dash cam, unwire the dash cam, and just take loads of stuff out, empty the whole thing completely. And I guess in the process of all of this, I must have turned on an interior light and forgotten about that. Because we left the Jazz all empty, ready to go to the dealership the next day because we needed the Jazz to pick up the new car because I was part exchanging it. So that's why this was an essential thing we needed to do. So the next day, we said, right, we got the call from the dealership. They're ready for us. Let's go. Got in the Jazz, sat down, turned the key in the ignition. Nothing. Literally, the car was totally dead. Like, the engine didn't even attempt to start up. The dashboard didn't light up. I was like, oh my god, the world is ending. What do I do? So we phoned our neighbor, and it turns out, unfortunately, his car is also off-road. The alternator thing had blown up, so his car was completely non-functional. It's like, oh no, what do I do? So I phoned friends, none of them were about. And then, luckily, an old couple opened their garage opposite us at that exact moment. So I was like, oh, could you perhaps help me jumpstart my car? So literally, they turned their engine on, connected to my car. 5 minutes go by, literally the Jazz still completely dead. Meanwhile, we're phoning the the car dealership. We're like, just having a few issues with my car. It won't start. I promise it's okay. It's just the battery's dead. And they were like, oh, okay, we'll have to just check with our head office, but it should be fine. And then eventually I gave up. The old couple then had to leave somewhere, so I was left with a dead car. I was like, this is a nightmare. I carried on phoning friends who I knew had cars, and until eventually one said, oh yeah, I can come around in 15 minutes. So I was like, fine, great, let's do that. 15 minutes go by. He arrives. It is Toyota Yaris. Drish, you're a legend if you're watching this video. You're probably not. But yeah, he arrived, connected it up, literally took 25 minutes to get the car jumped. By the way, I had to do a quick load here to get the parachutes to deploy properly for some reason. Anyway, yeah, took 25 minutes for the Jazz to charge sufficiently so that it could start the engine. So we did that. It charged. It worked. It got started. Getting out of the garage without stalling was very stressful. Like, getting out of the garage without stalling is a very normal occurrence for me, I might want to add. But in this moment where it was essential I didn't stall it, let's just say it was very, very stressful. Anyway, we got it going. I didn't stall it. On the way to the dealership, we phoned and said, hey, we're on our way. Let's do this. And they were like, oh, yeah, our head office said to cancel the deal because your car wouldn't start. And I was like, no, my insurance runs out on the Honda Jazz and I was really looking forward to getting this new car, you know? And anyway, I'm very paraphrasing because I'm realizing now that the mission is about to end. But yeah, lots of backs and forths, half-hour wait in a car park, phoning head offices and dealerships and all that. Eventually, we got things sorted and they came back with my new car and the part exchange was all fine. But yeah, what an absolute nightmare. And this is, here we are splashing down and then we sank because there was no buoyancy to this craft. So let's just cut to a shot of it on the launch pad. We can pretend this is how it landed. Yeah, what an absolute nightmare. And this isn't even the only reason why KSP2 content has been delayed on this channel. There's just, everything seems to have gone wrong for me in these past couple of weeks. Well, not gone wrong, but like lots of things have been happening that sort of inhibited my ability to make Kerbal content. But rest assured, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So Kerbal content's frequency will resume on this channel very soon. And Kerbal content, and all content on the channel, in fact, is supported by the wonderful names on screen, my Patreon members and my channel members. It's their generous support that allows me to keep on making this content for all you guys. There's more content on screen in the form of 2 videos from my channel that usually thinks you'll like, hopefully they're good picks. And yeah, that's the end of this video. Ironically, again, this is going to be an easy mission, guys, that I could crank out quickly before going away, and then it turned out to be this massive, big ordeal. But in the end, it all worked out fine. And that's the end of the video. Goodbye. That's it.